So started super small side hustle, tax returns for friends and family, that sort of thing, bookkeeping. And as I kind of, built my chops, so to speak, in the corporate world and learned about what really good and really big companies are doing from an accounting perspective and what good looks like, and migrating myself through accounting departments and eventually into finance, I just figured at some point, like, look, I've already had this side hustle. I'm doing some of this already. I can take what I've learned in the corporate world, apply that to small business clients, and help those businesses grow and be successful. And I was at a conference in Vegas, and I was talking to another firm, a young firm owner. What he told me basically convinced me, like, I should go do this and do it full time. And so I literally texted my wife from her craps table and said, when I get back, I'm going to quit my job and we're going to do this full time.
Welcome to Future Driven. I'm Adam Lejeunekopp, and on this podcast, we talk about challenges and wins in business. See the vision, drive the future. Okay, welcome to episode 46 of the Future Driven podcast. I am here with Chris Hervochon, CPA, CVA of Hervochon, a company, if you will. Chris Hervochon is the company?
Pretty much, yeah. Chris Hervochon, CPA, CVA, LLC, which is like the sexiest name ever, I know.
It's a little bit of everything, man. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we connected recently on LinkedIn and some other places, and we're here to talk a little bit about your background and everybody's favorite topic, which is money, and how you can help them make more money, save more money, probably more save more money than anything. But we can dive into that when we get into your agency, your company. But would love to get a little bit of background, professional background, post-university, et cetera. Where did you get your experience prior to launching your own company?
Yeah, very cool. So let's see, graduated undergrad with an accounting degree and immediately went and became a golf pro. So that makes a whole bunch of sense, but that lasted for about 5 minutes, which is why I'm sitting here today. From there, I got into forensic accounting. I did that for about 3.5 years. That was a fascinating experience. Got to see a lot of stuff. And from there, we went into corporate accounting. I spent, the next 7 years in corporate accounting. And when I was in corporate is when I started what is now this business. It started as a side hustle that I grew for 7 years. And I got to the point where I just needed to make a decision. Either I was going to keep that as a side hustle and leave it the size that it was, or I was going to go and try it full time.
What year was that you started the side hustle?
That would have been 2011.
And I guess we should go back even further. What year were you a golf pro? Because you can't just gloss right over that one.
Oh, my bad. Okay. So that was, 2006, 2007, and a small portion of 2008.
That's pretty, you say 5 minutes, but that's a couple of years. That's pretty impressive.
Trust me, it was 5 minutes. But I appreciate you saying that.
How does it work in the golf pro tour? How many tournaments did you lock in during that time frame?
How many did I play?
Yeah.
I was playing like mini tour events, and at the time I was in New Jersey playing Philadelphia section PGA events and like small stuff, right? I would never qualified for what was then the nationwide tour or a PGA tour, like never any of the big stuff. So like not a US Open, like do not want to overstate my experience even a little bit. So I don't know. It was probably a couple dozen really. But I was working at a club, and then I worked in retail for a while as a golf pro. If anybody is familiar with Dick's Sporting Goods, that was back when Dick's had a PGA pro on staff in every single store. So that was a cool gig. And the thing there was it allowed you to write your own schedule. So you could write your own schedule so that you could go play in tournaments. When you work at a club, especially when you're a low man on the totem pole, you're working 6 days a week. You have zero control over your schedule, and like good luck trying to find some time to play and practice. So that was kind of the theory there. But I got out of that in early 2008.
Well, we were going to talk about accounting, but maybe we should talk about PGA and live golf instead.
We can do that. I'm game if you are.
Yeah, I mean, well, I do. Let's talk a little bit about that. I know only some surface level stuff. What's your thought on how live golf is challenging PGA and changing the landscape a little bit?
It's a good question. So from a format perspective, like, I think that it's interesting to have different formats, for the viewer and probably for the player too. Now, so that's cool. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the format that they're using where it's the individual and the team. And I think they're 54 hole events. And like, I don't know. I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist. So in that sense, it's not terribly appealing to me. I think that it's, from a viewer's perspective, it's unfortunate now where we don't get all of the best players at the same tournaments as often because some of them, they're just excluded now. Right. So it's unfortunate there, but I think that there's so much really good golf happening out there, and there's so much really good young talent, and it's been pretty interesting for a while, even without a really big presence from Tiger. That it's still good watching. Like the PGA Tour is still fun to watch. I will continue to watch it. I volunteer at a PGA Tour event every single year, and I have for years. I will continue to do that. It'll continue to be interesting. So that's cool. I mean, it's only, every sport really, I mean, it's only a matter of time before somebody or something comes in with a whole bunch of money and tries to take over that sport. I mean, it's happened in the NFL, half a dozen times, something like that. You had the USFL first and the XFL and all that stuff. So, that's kind of where I'm at on it. I haven't spent a whole lot of time watching live golf. I do spend a lot of time watching PGA Tour golf, but that's just me.
And then kind of last on that topic, this, I don't know exactly what it is, but this spinoff tomorrow with Tiger and Rory, they've developed. I'm interested to see what it almost feels like Top Shot or Top Golf.
Yeah.
With these lights and what exactly is that format that's coming out? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's my understanding of it though, is like a virtual kind of exhibition type deal, like a Topgolf-esque type thing. I don't know.
Like
it could be cool.
Arena, right? It's not like on a course. It's almost like an arena type feeling.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that was going to start tomorrow. So I gotta tune into that one.
No, tomorrow as in tomorrow.
That's what it's called.
And Rory's company.
Yeah. Okay. So
I got you. It's tomorrow, without the vowels type of thing. But yeah, I mean, it was just really interesting to see how, Liv came in, obviously controversial, but it's making PGA respond a little bit, which I think ultimately is going to be good for the sport. Hopefully things settle down, like you say, so that we can get all the best players playing together, or at least being able to go back and forth. But that's still pretty hot topic. So we will we'll go back to the accounting and the money stuff.
Fair enough.
So after you played some great golf and then you got your chops in the corporate world a little bit, I think we left off around 2011. What was kind of next for you?
Yeah. So 2011 is when I got my CPA license. So I started super small side hustle, tax returns for friends and family, that sort of thing, bookkeeping. And that basically just grew. And as I kind of, build my chops, so to speak, in the corporate world, and learned about what really good and really big companies are doing from an accounting perspective and what good looks like, and migrating myself through accounting departments and eventually into finance, and just learning, how to do that and do it well. I just figured at some point, like, look, I've already had this side hustle. I'm doing some of this already. I can take what I've learned in the corporate world, apply that to small business clients, and that would be cool. And it would be fun, and, help those businesses grow and be successful. And, it was just something that I was interested in. And so basically, I mean, the actual story is that I was at a conference in Vegas and I was talking to another firm, a young firm owner, and what he told me basically convinced me, like, I should go do this and do it full time. And so I literally texted my wife from her craps table and said, when I get back, I'm going to quit my job and we're going to do this full time. And so you can imagine how that went, but she was and continues to be super supportive. But that's how it started. And that was 2018 when I went full time. And it was a virtual firm. It always has been. And in 2018, it was a little bit harder to sell a virtual firm, meaning the services that we provide, because you still get the calls like, hey, I want to come into the office and I want to drop off all my shoebox stuff, or I'll drop off all my paper. It's like, well, I don't have an office and I work from home, and, that sort of thing. So the conversation, it wasn't difficult, but it was just kind of one of those things. And, COVID hits and that conversation's not a thing anymore. And it hasn't been, and a bunch of firms have gone virtual. And so now we're more of the norm than we are the outliers, but it's just kind of how we've evolved. Right. So here we are.
Yeah. It's kind of exciting the way that COVID accelerated something that was inevitable anyways, right? Like we needed to get to scanning everything in or digital, in the case of, the shoebox, right? That was a different generation that was used to dropping off the shoebox and then counting the receipts by hand, right? We stopped that in probably early 2000s, and then and 2020 hits and it just says enough of that stuff. You need to fast track virtual offices, which I'm a big fan of as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the accounting profession, I mean, it does need to change, and it needs to change drastically, in my opinion. But it's needed that change for a while. And so having something to facilitate that, where it becomes a more attractive profession for younger folks. So I'm talking about folks who are in middle school, high school, considering it as a career for college. Like the pipeline for CPAs in particular has been declining for way before COVID, well over a decade at this point. And so you need something to change that. And one of those things is like, hey, we're going to operate like we're actually a modern business, and the profession is going to operate like we're modern folks. And so that's part of the positive transformation that I think that COVID helped to facilitate. COVID, obviously an unfortunate event globally, but there were some positive effects, especially for the accounting profession, I think.
So what else do you feel needs to change in your profession to attract the next generations?
Well, the big thing that I argue is pricing. I think that a number of CPAs, and we see this in the marketing industry as well too. A number of CPAs have undercharged and underpriced for a very, very long time. And so if you look at starting wages for accountants, they've started to move recently, but they were stagnant for a very long time. So when you consider the fact that you are going to college, which has escalated in price for the last 20 years, almost without abatement, and then, sometime around, I think it was 2010, where now you've got to go to a fifth year to go and become licensed as a CPA. Now you're adding to that cost. And if you're going to go for the fifth year, you're probably going to go for the sixth year and get your master's, right? So really we're talking about 6 years of college, and we're talking about several $100,000. And maybe it doesn't make as much sense to come out and make $40,000 as it did in the 90s, when we were basically still making $40,000 as a start out accountant, right? So that doesn't make sense. But, then the pushback that you hear from practitioners is, well, we can't afford to pay these increased salaries. But, that's a pricing problem. That's a you pricing problem. If you're charging $100 for a tax return, you're not going to be able to pay a starting out accountant who's fresh out of school $70,000. Like that math doesn't work, because ultimately we're selling our time. There is no automation that exists in the tax business, or hardly any automation, certainly not enough. And so it's not like you can automate your way out of that. You're selling time, and now the time's gotten expensive, and you haven't raised your prices commensurate with that for what you're delivering to the client. And now you got a problem, right? And so why would I go to 6 years of school and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and then sit and spend several $1,000s of my own money to go take the CPA exam to go make, basically peanuts, where I'm not even going to be able to service my student loans? Like that doesn't make rational, logical sense. So you're going to go into something else, something that pays more money, where you don't have to go through all those hurdles, to get into the profession. And that's what we've seen. And this is the effect. And it's not going to get any better anytime soon. I think we've got a decade-long problem ahead of us, if not longer. 75% of the CPAs right now are retirement age or older. So what are we going to do with that when we've had a declining pipeline for the last 12 years?
Well, doesn't that mean more market share for you?
Sure. But again, for the most part, we're selling time. Yeah. And so if we have to bring on capacity, and if the capacity that we have to bring on is time, so people, makes it difficult, right? So we need more automation, and we need more tech. We need better processes. We need higher prices to control the capacity. We need all of those things. But ultimately that's going to get to some sort of an inflection point where we can start to pay people who are coming out of college enough to entice them when they're in high school to go into accounting when they get there.
So your company tell us the services that you are currently offering today.
Yes. So we specialize in virtual CFO services for marketing and creative agencies. That's our sweet spot. Generally, we're in the 5 to 15 person agency size. That's our sweet spot. In that, we are wrapping in everything financial generally. So that's everything from forecasting, budgeting, cash flow planning, that sort of stuff. That's on the CFO side. But we're also including the accounting. So bookkeeping, payroll, all the nuts and bolts stuff that you need to do to make sure that you have good numbers in order to be able to do the advisory well, which is that budgeting, forecasting, advice type piece. And then we also do the tax on as well. So we have that full 360-degree picture for our clients: tax planning, tax prep, bookkeeping, payroll, and then the advisory on top.
That's great. I mean, that's a huge service that's required for any agency that's going to grow from that 5 to 15 number to, 10, 20, or whatever their aspirations are. Even if you want to stay in that realm, you got to know your numbers, increase profitability, and really focus there, right? So the forecasting really, because, speaking from my personal experience, the first couple of years, it was very reactionary and my decisions were way too late. Right. So as soon as I started implementing best practices and hiring finance to help, now all of a sudden I can start to forecast and anticipate. And, I'm thinking 90, 120 days out, consistently, while the team is focusing on the client work being delivered today. But it took a little bit to get there, right? Everybody kind of has to go through. Similar to you, I started one person side hustle and then, started slowly growing from there.
Yep. All the stuff you got to learn the hard way sometimes, right?
That's right. But that's good, man. And agencies, plenty of them out there. Plenty of them need help. Usually creative or sales focused people. So money and managing the books is not really a skill set there. So was that all calculated? How did you boil down to that niche specifically?
Good question. It's a couple of things. So I was working part-time for another CPA firm as kind of part of my side hustle period, right? And one of my clients was an agency. Like my first CFO client was that same agency that kind of migrated from a controller client to a CFO client. And we don't need to get it down at the weeds on what that distinction is, but never mind that. So had some experience there. When I went out on my own, I knew I needed a niche. Like my second client was an agency, my third client was an agency, like my fifth client was an agency. And at that point, it's like, oh, well, I've got experience here. I've got a stable of these types of businesses at this point. What we do and how we do it fits really well into the agency model as far as like how we're actually doing the accounting and how we can add value and how we can generate really good numbers. And so that makes sense there. And then on top of that, like honestly, the creatives are just fun to work with and they appreciate creativity. Like I like to think of our firm as a bunch of creative accountants. Like we're not creative as far as we're not creating the numbers in a creative way, right? Like you're not going to see us on American Greed on CNBC, but the way that we control quality and the way that we produce what we produce has a lot of creativity baked in. So that's something that I found that agency owners tend to appreciate. So it's just a lot of fun. It's a win-win the whole way around, right?
That's awesome, man. Well, congrats on the growth to date. And because been about 4 or 5 years now?
Yep. Yeah. 4.5 years full time at this point. Haven't missed, the kids haven't missed a meal. I haven't missed a meal. Everything's fine. So far, so good.
Oh, that's great. So let's dive a little bit into kind of where you're going, what you envision the future for your company. What does the next 5-10 years look like for you?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Next 5 years, what we are anticipating and what we're planning for is we'll basically be 10x where we are right now. Continuing in the agency space for sure, and we're probably going to pick up 2 to 3 more niches. We have started down the path with nonprofits as well. For a lot of the same reasons as we got into the agency space. So we are very early days in that. The next niche that we probably bring on will be SaaS companies, I believe. So we do have one SaaS company that we work with right now, and they've been a lot of fun. And so we're kind of simultaneously learning through that, but then also it's a good niche. It's kind of in that same type of realm. So that's where we're going to be. 3 niches probably, and then the hope is 10x the size inside of 5 years.
And so that include 10x the people, or are you going to help revolutionize some of the automation in your industry so that you don't need so many people and you can take on that amount of work?
So some of it's going to be on the automation side for sure. And that's one of my unique skill sets really, is building accounting automation and building it internally and having that ability. We do a really good job of keeping our ear to the ground, so to speak, and embedding ourselves inside of the profession and just kind of seeing what's going on and basically making friends so we can kind of see what that pipeline is going to be from a technology perspective. Yep. So leveraging that where we can. I would imagine that inside the next few years, we're going to see a lot of helpful automation on the accounting, bookkeeping, payroll side. I am not as positive on the tax side. The tax technology world is that's a tough nut to crack for sure. And it's been very, very slow moving. I would say it's probably going to continue to be slow moving.
Yeah, that's probably the right assessment as well. And then especially with COVID, IRS is even slower since COVID hit.
IRS and basically every state Department of Revenue has been, shall we say, difficult.
So then 10 years from now, have you gotten that far out in your strategic planning yet? Or if you had to guess, where are you going to be now?
10 years from now, hopefully playing a lot more golf than I'm currently playing.
Well, hey, there you go. It goes full circle, right?
That's right. 10 years from now, honestly, I don't really look out that far, apart from I know that I want to be playing more golf. But I would imagine that the business is going to look vastly different from all sides, both from an internal perspective, probably from an external perspective as well. Like tough to say.
Okay. And then final question to kind of wrap it all up. In the future, what are you going to be driving? And that could be anything from business, vehicles, space rockets. What is it that you're going to be driving in the foreseeable future?
It's going to be probably multiple businesses.
Anything you want to elaborate on today?
Yeah, no, not really. That's one of those undefined things, right? So, one of the interesting things in what we do is that we get to see and understand a lot of different entrepreneurial type endeavors, and we get exposure to a lot of opportunities. So I can imagine myself wanting to be involved in a diversified portfolio of businesses to some extent, probably not running all of them, but at least helping to run multiple. And we've kind of gone down that path a little bit right now, my wife and I. So yeah, I would say multiple businesses, TBD on what they're going to be and what they're going to be in. SaaS has always interested me. For sure. And then obviously the accounting business, which is just a really good business to have, a really good skill set to have, kind of underpins a lot of the entrepreneurial endeavor, necessary skill set. So that's kind of what I see in the next 10 years, plus or minus.
Love it. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate your time and looking forward to following along the journey.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.